So we're going to talk about the organisation of the European Union again and focus specifically on the European Parliament. Now, first we're going to talk about the European Union powers. Remember, this institution, this is one of the institutions, it has legislative power because it's voted for by all the European citizens. So it derives its power from them. For that reason, it approves legislative acts proposed by the Commission. Remember, the Commission can initiate law, it can create a programme and a direction for Europe, but it's the European Parliament which actually says yes or no to those laws. Okay, the European Parliament also institutes investigative commissions. Obviously, if it needs to make a stand, take a position on a law, whether it's approved or not, or maybe amended, etc., then it obviously needs to understand the reality out there in Europe. So, for example, if there's the negotiation of the Withdrawal Treaty for Brexit, or the Free Trade Agreement for Brexit, the European Parliament will want to know how certain proposals will affect Europe, what consequences they would have. So for example, for the Free Trade Agreement, maybe it called business leaders, industry leaders, economists, to say, you know, what if we have these tariffs or this restriction, what would happen to your specific industry or to the economy as a whole? The same with the Withdrawal Treaty. Maybe they talk to leaders of European citizens living in England or in the United Kingdom to understand what they wanted and what was important for them in terms of rights after Brexit, etc. So they need these commissions. It's exactly the same in the Italian Parliament. The Italian Parliament has lots of commissions, you know, bicameral commissions with the two houses, or maybe commissions for specific subjects, or maybe, you know, to solve certain problems, the Immigration Commission or whatever. Very important in a parliament just to keep in touch with the reality on the ground. So they need to talk to the people, the protagonists on the ground. And they can summons those, have a lot of powers to summons people to their commissions to question them. It also has the initiative of the initiative power that the Commission has. So it can suggest to the Commission to initiate a law. It cannot force the Commission to initiate the law. It doesn't have the power of initiative. But, you know, in a Commission, if something comes up, maybe they talk to the European citizen leaders that live in the United Kingdom and they say, we want this, maybe they can suggest to the Commission to propose that as a law. They have this possibility, this power, but they can't force. They don't have initiative, legal initiative of the law. Other powers, they can force the Commission to resign, so they control the Commission. Remember, the Commission is the government, is exactly like the Italian Parliament with the government. There's a vote of confidence in the European Parliament on the Commission at the start, when the commissioners have been nominated by the European Council. There would be a vote of confidence to say they approve of that commission, and at any time they can have this vote of confidence and dissolve the commission if they deem necessary. If they think the Commission is not going in the direction or hasn't got the direction which is best for Europe. So we do have a real democratic control on, these are representatives controlling these commissioners which are nominated by national governments. So the European Parliament is really to be the voice of the European citizens, to be the voice of Europe. It's not to be represent any national interest, specific national interest. Also, okay, it does have some deliberative power on optional spending of the European Union and can reject a budget proposed by the Commission. So the Commission can propose a budget which needs to be made law. Remember, European Union does have tax raising powers for example, goods coming in to Europe, or maybe money coming from national governments, contributions from national governments, and it can spend these in specific ways. And it needs to do a budget every year to indicate how it's going to tax and spend. This budget can be rejected by the European Parliament, so it doesn't have to approve it. So it does have a veto on the European budget and on specific optional spending. This is a big power. Remember, the economic power is very key in a nation state, very sovereign, shall we say. And then any new member of the EU would be through an international treaty, and most international treaties also must be approved by the European Parliament. Another example is Brexit. When they did the withdrawal agreement, it had to be agreed by every single member state, but also by the European Parliament. And also for the free trade agreement, it was the same. It needed to be approved by the European Parliament. So it has that power too. Okay, so the European Parliament was made of 736 members of Parliament. Remember, we've had Brexit, now there's only 705 members of Parliament. It's elected by universal suffrage, which means everybody of adult age can vote, but it must be, the members of Parliament must be voted for through proportional representation, a system of proportional representation which really gives a direct reflection of the composition of what the European citizens want. So it's not manipulated in any way by a majority system. Remember, with a majority system, you can have a minimum where, you know, under 4% you don't get representation. You can have extra seats for the winners, etc. Maybe you have electoral colleges which really distort the system. But because the European Union wants to remain the most democratic, it does ask for a proportional representation system to elect the members of Parliament. And the elections take place every 5 years. Its headquarters are in Strasbourg in France. Okay, so a very important point is that the number of deputies elected to each country varies according to the proportion of their population, or how big, the dimension of the population. So a big country like Germany has 99 seats, or I think a bit less now, or a bit more after Brexit. Another country like Malta would have about 5 seats because it's got a very small population. That was one reason Turkey, many didn't want Turkey in the European Union. It is a large population. It would have more seats than any other country. here we can see the number of seats in 2004, and you've got here 99 for Germany, 72 for Italy, which is a big country, has a big population, one of the biggest populations. Also a founding father of the European Union, a founding member of the European Union, so they had negotiated early on for their proportion of MEPs. Those that come later would have less power to negotiate, as you know, the benefits seem to have grown. Obviously the European Union members can reduce their deputy numbers. Those original ones, it was always best to enter early on so you can make the ground rules, so you can really establish the rules in the member states' favour. Those that come later, as the European Union has grown as a more successful organisation, had less power to enter, and so maybe would be given less deputies, for, even though, you know, not in the same proportion as the older members. You've got the divisions in the Parliament according to philosophy. That's very important. It's not according to nation state, so it's according to political philosophy. So you've got groups that are right, groups that are left, groups that are green, not green, Eurosceptic even, maybe traditional or, you know, progressive, etc., etc. It's all about political philosophy. Here we've got the different groups, different parliamentary groups, and you can see here, this group is slightly right of the centre in the spectrum, and you've got Forza Italia in there. We've got all the other parties, maybe from Germany, France, etc. We've got the socialist group here, and these groups will be fighting for philosophy, not for national interest. Okay, so they want to build a Europe based on their political beliefs. So, for example, maybe the left will want more protections for workers, and maybe the right would want a freer free market with less you know, interventions, etc. So, got to remember, this is a parliament. They're not fighting for their national interest, and it's organised like that. Initially, the Parliament didn't have so much power, and that was mainly because we hadn't integrated, so we hadn't shared these sovereignties, and so the Parliament was very limited. But as it became more integrated and things put on a European level, so it grew in power. For example, you've got the European Act, which created the single market. That was a moment when the Parliament had more powers. It could make laws on this single market, you know, maybe for consumers, maybe for the environment, etc. So that integration really gave it more power. Also the Maastricht Treaty, this is the Union Agreement, which is the Maastricht Treaty, really introduced a political union, political integration, obviously foreign policy and security policy particularly, and obviously the Parliament could then make laws on this foreign policy, maybe have sanctions against Iran or you know, these types of things, creating an agreement with India on movement of Indians into Europe, etc. So, as it's grown more integrated, as Europe has increased its integration, the Parliament has increased its power because it can then govern on these sovereign integrations, on this pooled sovereignty. Okay, we must remember the European Parliament is always less relevant than the national parliaments, because the national parliaments have the really sovereign prerogatives like criminal law, maybe immigration, army, the use of force, etc. There's a lot of prerogatives where the European Union cannot make laws, the European Parliament cannot make laws, so the national parliaments are more relevant to the citizens for that reason.